Asbestos Lawsuit. Overview of health risks, injuries, exposure, resources, and litigation. Asbestos refers to a group of 6 naturally occurring fibrous minerals, recognized for their durability, heat resistance, and excellent insulating properties. These minerals consist of long, thin fibers that can be easily separated and woven. Asbestos has been used since ancient times, but it became widely popular in the late 19th and early 20th centuries as an ingredient in various building materials and industrial products. The health risks associated with asbestos exposure, such as lung cancer, asbestosis, and mesothelioma, were not widely recognized until the mid-20th century. In this video, we'll discuss all major topics surrounding asbestos, including the extensive history of its use, the health risks from exposure, and common sources of asbestos exposure. There are 2 main classes of asbestos minerals. 1. Serpentine includes chrysotile white asbestos. 2. Amphibole includes amosite, brown asbestos, crocidolite, blue asbestos, anthophyllite, tremolite, and actinolite. Chrysotile asbestos is the most commonly used form, accounting for about 95% of asbestos in commercial applications. Historical use of asbestos. In the 20th century, asbestos was widely used across various industries due to its fire-resistant properties, durability, and affordability. Its application in products ranged from building materials to auto parts, peaking in use between the 1940s and 1970s. However, as health concerns emerged, many countries implemented regulations and bans on asbestos use. Common asbestos-containing products in recent history include auto parts. Asbestos was used in brake pads and linings, clutch facings, and gaskets for its ability to withstand high temperatures. Building materials. Asbestos was found in roofing shingles, ceiling tiles, and flooring products for its durability and fire resistance. Cement. Asbestos fibers were mixed with cement to enhance the strength and fireproofing properties of cement products. Electrical parts. Asbestos was used in electrical insulation for its heat-resistant properties. Insulation. Asbestos was a key material in thermal insulation products used in buildings and machinery. Exposure to asbestos can lead to severe, life-threatening health conditions, particularly when fibers are inhaled or ingested. These tiny fibers can become trapped in the lungs or other tissues, causing inflammation, scarring, and eventually leading to the development of several cancers. Notable diseases linked to asbestos exposure include asbestosis. This chronic lung disease results from inhaling asbestos fibers, leading to lung tissue scarring. Symptoms such as shortness of breath, persistent cough, and chest pain can develop as the scarring restricts breathing and reduces oxygen intake. Asbestosis is typically seen in individuals with a history of prolonged exposure to asbestos, and there is no cure. Treatment focuses on managing symptoms and preventing further lung damage. Mesothelioma. This rare and aggressive cancer mainly affects the lining of the lungs, pleura, but can also occur in the linings of the abdomen or heart. Mesothelioma is strongly linked to asbestos exposure, and unlike asbestosis, even brief exposures can lead to the development of this cancer. Mesothelioma has a long latency period, with symptoms often not appearing until 20 to 50 years after exposure, complicating early diagnosis and treatment. Mesothelioma is primarily caused by asbestos exposure, which can occur through direct contact or environmentally. Inhaling or ingesting asbestos fibers allows them to embed in the linings of the lungs, abdomen, or heart, causing inflammation and genetic mutations that develop into cancer. Even minimal exposure, particularly in industries like construction, shipbuilding, or manufacturing, significantly raises mesothelioma risk. The symptoms of mesothelioma often resemble those of other respiratory conditions, which can make diagnosis challenging. Symptoms of mesothelioma typically include, but are not limited to, shortness of breath, chest or abdominal pain, persistent cough, unexplained weight loss, fatigue, other adverse health effects. These symptoms usually develop gradually and worsen over time as the disease progresses. The life expectancy of a mesothelioma patient varies depending on the stage of diagnosis and the individual's overall health. The average life expectancy after diagnosis is typically between 12 and 21 months. However, some patients may live longer with early detection and aggressive treatment. Exposure to asbestos fibers is linked to several cancers due to genetic damage and tissue inflammation. Besides mesothelioma, significant asbestos-related cancers include lung cancer and ovarian cancer. Lung cancer. Cause: inhaled asbestos fibers lodge in the lungs, causing inflammation and mutations. Latency: symptoms typically appear 15 to 35 years post-exposure. Symptoms: these may include chronic cough, chest pain, shortness of breath, and unexplained weight loss. Risk: smoking greatly increases lung cancer risk in those exposed to asbestos. Treatment: options vary by stage and may include surgery, chemotherapy, and radiation. Ovarian cancer. Cause: asbestos fibers ingested or contacting reproductive organs may trigger inflammation and cancer. Risk: higher in women exposed through contaminated products or in occupational settings. Symptoms often vague, like abdominal bloating, pain, and changes in bowel or bladder habits, leading to delayed diagnosis. Treatment generally involves surgery, chemotherapy, and targeted therapies. These conditions underscore the severe health risks associated with asbestos exposure. Asbestos exposure is linked to several chronic and progressive non-cancerous conditions, often with no cure and worsening with prolonged exposure. These include pleural plaques, thickened scar tissue on the lung lining that can impair breathing, pleural effusion, fluid buildup between the lungs and chest wall, causing chest pain and breathing difficulty, diffuse pleural thickening, extensive scarring of the lung lining leading to reduced lung function, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. COPD exposure to asbestos can exacerbate COPD symptoms and accelerate its progression. These conditions significantly affect quality of life, primarily through breathing difficulties and requiring long-term medical management. Asbestos exposure primarily occurs through occupational and environmental sources. Recognizing these sources is crucial for prevention and addressing legal issues. Occupational asbestos exposure: industries at risk, workers in construction, shipbuilding, manufacturing, and automotive repair face higher risks due to direct contact with asbestos materials. Tradespeople, electricians, plumbers, and mechanics often encounter asbestos in older buildings or equipment. Regulations and risks. Despite stringent regulations, the improper handling or removal of asbestos-containing materials continues to endanger workers, particularly those with prolonged exposure. Environmental asbestos exposure. Natural and human-made sources. Asbestos can become airborne from natural deposits or through activities like mining, construction, or demolition. Residential risks. People living near natural asbestos deposits or in older buildings with asbestos materials are at risk of inhalation when these fibers are released into the air. Companies linked to asbestos exposure. Notable examples include Johns Manville and W.R. Grace & Company, known for their use of asbestos in construction and insulation products. Products containing asbestos. Common asbestos-containing products: insulation materials in pipes and boilers, vinyl and linoleum floor tiles, roofing shingles, automotive parts like brake pads and clutches, and cement products used in water and sewage systems. Understanding these exposure pathways helps in managing health risks and pursuing necessary legal actions against responsible parties. Asbestos exposure can occur through occupational and environmental sources, which are important to recognize for both prevention and legal action. Occupational asbestos exposure: workers in construction, shipbuilding, manufacturing, and automotive repair are at high risk of inhaling asbestos. Tradespeople, including electricians, plumbers, and mechanics, often encounter asbestos in older buildings or equipment. Despite regulations, the improper handling or removal of asbestos-containing materials still poses significant health risks, especially for long-term industrial workers. Environmental asbestos exposure: asbestos fibers can become airborne from natural deposits or during activities like mining, construction, or demolition, especially in areas with natural asbestos in soil or rocks. Aging buildings with asbestos materials can also release fibers into the environment, posing risks to nearby residents. Companies linked to asbestos exposure: many industries have historically used asbestos for its insulating and heat-resistant properties. Notable companies include Johns Manville, Insulation and Roofing; W.R. Grace & Company Vermiculite Insulation; Asbestos Manhattan, Automotive Brake Linings; Armstrong World Industries, Flooring and Ceiling Material; Owens Corning Fiberglass Corporation, Construction Insulation. Products containing asbestos: despite reduced use, asbestos-containing materials remain in many older structures and products, posing risks during renovations or demolitions. Common products include insulation materials in pipes, boilers, and attics; vinyl and linoleum flooring tiles and adhesive; roofing shingles and siding; automotive parts like brake pads, clutches, and gaskets; asbestos cement products used in water and sewage systems. Understanding these exposure pathways is crucial for managing health risks and pursuing legal recourse against responsible parties. Secondary asbestos exposure, also known as para-occupational exposure, happens when individuals indirectly come into contact with asbestos through clothing, tools, or other items that workers bring home from jobs in asbestos-related industries. This form of exposure particularly affects family members, such as spouses and children, of these workers. Although secondary exposure is generally less intense than direct occupational exposure, it still poses significant health risks and has been linked to serious diseases like mesothelioma. As the health risks associated with asbestos have become widely acknowledged, U.S. asbestos regulations and laws have evolved to protect workers, consumers, and the public. These regulations are enforced at both federal and state levels, but have not led to a complete ban on asbestos in the U.S. Several federal agencies regulate asbestos use and exposure to minimize health risks. Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, enforces the Asbestos Hazard Emergency Response Act, AHERA, in schools and manages the Clean Air Act, CAA, which includes an ESHAP standards for controlling asbestos emissions during demolition and renovation. Occupational Safety and Health Administration, OSHA, sets and enforces standards to protect workers in industries like construction and shipbuilding, mandating monitoring, training, and the use of protective equipment. These regulations aim to reduce asbestos exposure risks in various environments, including schools, workplaces, and broader communities. Asbestos litigation is a major area of mass tort law in the U.S., driven by the serious health risks from asbestos exposure. Individuals have filed lawsuits to seek compensation for medical expenses, pain, and other damages associated with diseases like asbestosis and mesothelioma. History of asbestos lawsuits. Asbestos litigation traces back to the early 20th century, but expanded significantly in the 1970s after the health dangers of asbestos were confirmed. A pivotal moment was the 1973 Boral v. Fiberboard Paper Products Corporation case, which established manufacturer liability for asbestos-related injuries. This case spurred numerous lawsuits and the creation of asbestos trust funds by bankrupt companies to handle the claims. Types of asbestos claims. Asbestos claims typically fall into two categories: personal injury claims filed by individuals diagnosed with asbestos-related illnesses. Plaintiffs must prove that their illness was caused by asbestos exposure and that the defendant was responsible. Wrongful death claims initiated by relatives or estates of deceased victims. These claims seek compensation for funeral costs, lost financial support, emotional suffering, and medical expenses incurred before death. Asbestos-related legal actions remain active, helping many victims receive compensation through settlements or court decisions. The statute of limitations for asbestos lawsuits varies by the type of claim and the state where it's filed. For personal injury claims related to asbestos, the statute typically begins when an individual is diagnosed with an asbestos-related illness, not at the time of exposure. This accounts for the often lengthy period for such conditions to manifest. For wrongful death claims, the statute of limitations generally starts from the date of the victim's death. While the specific time frame to file a lawsuit varies by state, it usually ranges from 1 to 3 years from the date of diagnosis or death. Given these varying timelines, it's crucial for victims and their families to consult with an asbestos attorney promptly to adhere to the necessary legal deadlines. Federal regulations and specific rules regarding asbestos trust funds may also influence the filing timeline. The statute of limitations for your case can vary depending on various factors. For this reason, it's best to discuss the specifics of your case with an attorney who can give you a more accurate idea of how the statute of limitations will apply to your case. You can do so by using the chat on our website, TruLaw.com, to quickly find out if your case qualifies within the statute of limitations and be connected with an attorney. Contact TruLaw using the chatbot to receive an instant case evaluation that will determine if you qualify to join others in filing an asbestos exposure lawsuit today. Victims of asbestos-related diseases like mesothelioma, lung cancer, and asbestosis have legal options to seek compensation due to the harm caused by asbestos exposure. Asbestos trust funds. Asbestos trust funds were established by companies responsible for asbestos exposure after they filed for bankruptcy. These funds are intended to provide compensation to individuals harmed by asbestos, helping cover medical expenses, lost wages, and other costs. Key details about asbestos trust funds. Qualifying for compensation, victims must prove asbestos exposure and diagnosis of an asbestos-related illness. Streamlined process. Trust fund claims typically resolve faster than court cases, with set procedures to process claims efficiently. Payment percentages. Compensation is usually a percentage of the claim's full value, determined by the fund's finances and claim volume. Filing through an asbestos trust fund offers a direct route to compensation, providing essential financial support to those affected. Many asbestos-related claims are settled out of court, providing victims a quicker resolution and substantial compensation to cover medical bills, lost income, and pain and suffering. The average settlement amount typically ranges from $1 million to $1.4 million, but this can vary significantly based on several factors: extent of illness. More severe conditions like mesothelioma often result in higher settlements compared to less severe illnesses. Duration and intensity of exposure. Longer and more intense exposure to asbestos usually correlates with higher compensation. Defendant's financial resources. Settlement amounts can also depend on the defendant company's financial health and the number of claims against it. Legal representation. Having an experienced asbestos attorney can significantly influence the negotiation for higher settlements. These factors collectively determine the financial outcome of asbestos lawsuit settlements, helping victims manage the significant impacts of their exposure. It's important to note that the settlement amounts discussed above are strictly to give affected individuals a general idea of what these settlement values typically average when claims are successful. These estimates should not be taken as a guarantee, and actual settlement amounts in successful asbestos claims may vary substantially based on a wide variety of factors. If you are considering filing an asbestos lawsuit, it is important to consult a legal professional. Use the chatbot on TruLaw.com to receive an instant case evaluation to learn more about potential asbestos settlement amounts and how TruLaw can assist you in pursuing compensation. Successfully proving asbestos exposure in a legal case requires solid evidence linking asbestos to your illness. Key types of evidence include employment records. These help show your work history and potential asbestos contact. Product identification. Records like purchase receipts or company documents that prove you handled asbestos-containing products. Witness testimony. Statements from coworkers or supervisors about your work environment and asbestos exposure. Medical records, diagnosis documents of asbestos-related illnesses such as mesothelioma or asbestosis are crucial. Expert testimony, insights from medical or occupational health experts on how asbestos exposure likely caused your condition. Workplace safety records, safety logs, or violation reports from your workplace that highlight known asbestos risks and the measures taken. Collectively, these pieces of evidence are vital to demonstrating how asbestos exposure occurred and linking it to your illness, enhancing your chances of obtaining compensation. Filing an asbestos lawsuit involves a series of important steps that your legal team will guide you through. The typical process may look something like this. 1. A mesothelioma patient or their family members will consult with an experienced asbestos attorney who can evaluate their case and determine the best course of action. 2. The attorney will gather evidence, including medical records and work history, to establish a link between asbestos exposure and the resulting illness. 3. The attorney will then work to determine possible recovery options. 4. Once the case is built, the lawyer will file a claim against the responsible parties, which may include former employers, manufacturers of asbestos-containing products, or asbestos trust funds. 5. The case will then continue evolving until there is a resolution through settlement or trial verdict. It's worth noting that many cases are resolved through settlements, but if an agreement cannot be reached, the case may proceed to trial. The duration of asbestos litigation varies widely, influenced by factors such as type of claim, differences in personal injury, wrongful death, or trust fund claims can affect duration. Jurisdiction and court procedures, legal processes differ by location. Number of defendants, more defendants can extend the litigation. Willingness to settle, settlements can significantly speed up resolution. While some asbestos claims may settle in under 90 days, mesothelioma lawsuits typically take 12 to 18 months. Trust fund claims might be processed quicker due to streamlined procedures. The exact timeline can vary, so consulting with your attorney for a tailored estimate is advisable based on your specific case details. Asbestos victims and their families can access various resources for medical and financial support, including emotional support, through established groups. Support groups for asbestos victims. Support groups are vital in providing emotional and practical support, offering a community where experiences and information can be shared. Notable support groups and organizations. Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization offers online support for those affected by asbestos-related diseases. Mesothelioma Applied Research Foundation provides a support community, educational materials, and funds research on mesothelioma. American Cancer Society supplies comprehensive resources and support for cancer patients, including those with asbestos-related conditions. Gilda's Club facilitates support and networking groups, educational lectures, and social events for cancer patients across the country. Wellness Community provides a range of support groups and activities tailored to specific cancer types, including asbestos-related cancers. These organizations help patients and families navigate the challenges of living with asbestos-related diseases. For asbestos victims, accessing the right medical care is crucial for both health management and supporting legal claims. It's essential for victims to collaborate closely with healthcare providers and legal representatives to secure comprehensive medical documentation. Available medical resources include specialized treatment centers. Many cancer centers feature specialized departments for treating mesothelioma and other asbestos-related conditions. Clinical trials. Organizations like the National Cancer Institute keep updated lists of clinical trials targeting asbestos-related diseases. Medical experts, skilled mesothelioma attorneys, often collaborate with medical professionals who provide expert testimony crucial for legal cases. Occupational health clinics. These clinics focus on occupational health issues and can offer critical documentation and evaluations for asbestos exposure cases. Asbestos medical screening programs. Some groups provide free or subsidized medical screenings for those potentially exposed to asbestos. These resources are designed to help asbestos victims receive the best possible care and support their legal efforts to obtain compensation. The financial impact of asbestos-related diseases can be significant. Various assistance programs are available to help alleviate this burden. Asbestos trust funds. Victims can file claims with trust funds set up by bankrupt asbestos companies, often with the help of an experienced attorney. Veterans benefits. Veterans exposed to asbestos during military service may be eligible for disability compensation and healthcare benefits from the VAA. Social Security Disability Insurance, SSDI. Those unable to work due to their illness may qualify for SSDI benefits. Medicare and Medicaid. These government programs can assist with medical costs for those who meet the eligibility criteria. Nonprofit organizations, entities like Cancer Care, offer financial aid for cancer-related expenses. Legal compensation. Compensation from successful asbestos lawsuits can cover medical bills, lost wages, and other expenses. Workers' compensation. Workers exposed to asbestos on the job might be eligible for benefits under workers' compensation. These programs provide crucial support to those dealing with the costs associated with asbestos diseases. Asbestos lawsuits are being filed by individuals nationwide who were exposed and subsequently developed mesothelioma or another form of cancer. With decades of experience working alongside top litigation leaders, TruLaw can assist individuals in pursuing compensation by holding companies accountable in asbestos-related cases. If you or a loved one have been exposed to asbestos, subsequently developed mesothelioma, or any other severe health condition, you may be eligible to file an asbestos lawsuit today. Contact TruLaw using the chat on our website, TruLaw.com, for an instant case evaluation that can determine if you qualify to file an asbestos lawsuit today.